Since it's October, spooky time, I thought I would ask everyone if they want me to tell some of the stories of my haunted life. I've lived in several haunted houses and have literally hundreds of experiences. Those experiences started when I was about 9, and they've continued on through my life now and gotten a lot stronger. Even the house I live in today is haunted, though not quite as bad as the last house I lived in before this one. Here's a sample of the kind of story that I have. When I was 18 years old, I was in the military, and I was stationed out in California. And I was married to my first husband. And I got home from work one day. It was a Monday, and I know it was a Monday because I used to teach line dancing out at the NCO club on the base where I was stationed. And at that time, I was newly married. I'd only been married a few weeks. And my family was very, very poor. So they didn't get to come out to my wedding, and we didn't go back home after we were married. I'd probably only been married about 2 or 3 weeks when this happened. So my first husband, he did not know my family or their names. So on this particular Monday afternoon, I got home from work, and I knew that it was going to be a few hours until I would have to go over to the NCO club to teach line dancing. So I decided I was going to take off my uniform, and I was going to clean my bathroom. At the house that day were me and my new husband. He was working nights during that time. He was not in the military. He was working nights, and he would sleep during the day, and then I would wake him up just before we had to go out to teach. So that day he was sleeping when I got home. I took off my uniform, went to the bathroom, and started to clean the toilet. Got on my hands and knees, I'm scrubbing the toilet, and all of a sudden I felt like somebody was watching me. So I looked over to my left toward the doorway in my bathroom, and there in the doorway was standing a 6.5-foot tall being, all in white. And I turned away from it for a second. My first thought was, girl, you have smelled way too much toilet bowl cleaner. And my second thought was embarrassment, because there I was in my underwear with somebody standing in the doorway that I didn't know. So I got up and I turned back toward the doorway, and it was still there. And I walked over to the doorway, which was probably 4 feet or so from where the toilet was, and I reached out to touch it. And when I did that, it disappeared. I tried to continue to clean the bathroom after that, but within a few minutes, I started to get the feeling that something was wrong with somebody in my family. And I didn't know who or what. But my first thought was maybe there was something wrong with my new husband. So I went in to check on him, and everything was fine. And this feeling of something is wrong in your family kept growing and growing and growing. And I was getting more and more anxious and nervous. And I finally woke up my husband, and I told him what had happened. And I said to him that I had seen this figure, and that I had the feeling that there was something really wrong with somebody in my family, but I didn't know who, and I didn't know what. And he just dismissed me. He said, "You're crazy. Nothing's going on. Nothing's wrong. It's all your imagination." And by this time, I'm really, really anxious and upset about this feeling. And so I looked at him and I said, "No, you don't understand." And as I'm saying this, it's the first time I have any knowledge of this. I said to him, "No, you don't understand. Someone in my family has been in a car accident, and I don't know who." Well, he blew me off again, said, it's all your imagination. There's nothing wrong. I'm going to call Frank. Frank was the guy who spun the records for us. That's how long ago this was, while we taught line dancing. And when he said that, I said, no, don't call Frank. Don't call Frank. And as I'm saying this to him, this next thing to him, it's also the first time I have knowledge of it, just like before. I looked at him and I said, don't call Frank because my mother is going to call in 10 minutes and tell us who was in the accident, who was in the car accident. And as I'm saying that, as the words are coming out of my mouth, I'm like in total disbelief because I didn't even know what I was saying. And he still blew me off and said, you're crazy. There's nothing going on. This is not real. And I just kept getting more and more upset. Finally, I said to him, just don't talk to me anymore about it. Well, I walk back by the room as he's on the phone with Frank, and I see him. I stop in the doorway to say hi to Frank, and I see him while he's talking to Frank, his face got really white, and his mouth dropped open and hit the floor, basically, and he dropped the phone. And he looked at me and he said, who's Fran? And I said, Fran is my mother. Not her real name, by the way. Doing that to protect her identity because I've told other stories about her. But anyway, I said, Fran is my mother. And he said, the operator just broke in with an emergency call from Fran. And I said, hang up the extension. And I, gave him that direction. And I ran to the other extension, which was about 5 feet away from where I was, to pick up the phone. When he hung up the other line, it allowed the operator to put the call through. And I picked up the phone, and on the phone was my mother, and she was telling me that my sister had been in a car accident and that she was in a coma. She turned out to be fine, by the way, at least as fine as she can be, in case she ever sees this. But she turned out okay after that. Everything worked out okay. But it was probably one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. And not long after, well, it was a long time after that my first husband was dying. By this time we were divorced and my 2 children were grown, and they were going over to see him as he was really sick before he died. And I had told my children this story repeatedly over the years, and they didn't believe me either. So I said, well, ask your father. Ask your father. And so when they went to see him, they asked him, did this really happen? And he said, yeah, that really happened, and your mom was really weird that day. Hope you like the story, and if you want more like that, then hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll give you more stories. Thanks.